Disappearance is one of the most unsettling occurrences in human history. The mystery behind it creates an eerie aura, often accompanied by unanswered questions, lingering fears, and unsettling unknowns. What's worse than a sudden disappearance is the aftermath, when the search leads to more questions than answers. In this article, we will explore some of the most disturbing disappearances ever recorded. These stories involve the unknown, leaving behind a trail of chills and suspense, each one darker than the last. Let's dive into these chilling events. The vanishing of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. The story begins on December 15, 1900. Off the coast of Scotland, on a small group of islands known as the Flannan Isles, here, a lighthouse was perched high above the ocean, guiding ships away from the dangerous rocks below. The lighthouse was manned by 3 keepers, James Duquette, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. They were responsible for ensuring the light remained operational, a task which was critical for maritime safety. However, when a relief ship arrived on December 26 to replace the men, they found the lighthouse completely abandoned. The doors were locked, the lamps were unlit, and a meal was left half-eaten on the table. More disturbing still was the absence of any signs of the men. Personal belongings, including clothes and bedding, were untouched. Despite an extensive search, no trace of the keepers was ever found. Theories about their disappearance include a freak accident, an attack by pirates, or even a supernatural event. One chilling suggestion is that the men were swept into the sea during a storm, though no bodies were ever recovered. The disappearance of flight MH370, perhaps one of the most infamous disappearances of modern times, is that of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. On March 8, 2014, the flight, which was en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people aboard, suddenly vanished from radar screens. Despite extensive international efforts to locate the plane, including search missions in the southern Indian Ocean, no wreckage was discovered for months, and the cause of its disappearance remains unknown. In the years since, debris from the plane has been found on various islands in the Indian Ocean, but the bulk of the aircraft, along with most of the passengers, has never been recovered. Several theories have surfaced over the years, including mechanical failure, hijacking, or a deliberate act by the pilot. However, no conclusive evidence has ever emerged, and the mystery continues to baffle experts and the public alike. What makes this disappearance particularly chilling is the utter lack of closure. Families of the victims have been left with more questions than answers, and the case remains one of the most haunting mysteries in aviation history: the vanishing of the Sodder children. In the early hours of Christmas Eve, in 1945, a fire broke out in the home of George and Jenny Sodder in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The fire destroyed the house, and although George, Jenny, and 4 of their children escaped the blaze, 5 of their children were trapped inside and presumed dead. However, when the fire was extinguished and the debris cleared, no remains of the children were found. In fact, there were no traces of the children's bodies, leading George and Jenny to believe that their children had survived the fire and were possibly kidnapped. Over the years, the Sodders received mysterious phone calls and sightings of their children, suggesting that they were alive and living elsewhere. Despite the passage of time and several investigations, the truth behind the disappearance remains unknown. The Sodder family continued to search for their missing children for decades, with no answers or closure. Their story remains one of the most disturbing, unsolved disappearances in the history of the United States: the disappearance of the Beaumont children. On January 26, 1966, 3 children, Jane Arnay and Grant Beaumont, disappeared from Glenelg Beach in Adelaide, Australia. The siblings were last seen playing near the water, but when their parents returned to pick them up, they were gone. Despite extensive searches and a nationwide investigation, no trace of the children was ever found. Witnesses reported seeing a man near the children just before their disappearance, but no concrete evidence ever linked him to the crime. Over the years, several theories have emerged, ranging from the idea that the children were abducted by a stranger to more sinister possibilities involving those close to them. However, the case remains unsolved, and the Beaumont children's fate is still a mystery that haunts Australia to this day. The disappearance of the Dyatlov Pass group in February 1959. A group of 9 experienced hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set out on an expedition to the Ural Mountains in Russia. The group was supposed to return on February 12th, but when they failed to show up, a search team was dispatched. When rescuers finally found the abandoned tent, it was slashed open from the inside, and the hikers' belongings were left behind. The searchers also discovered the bodies of the hikers scattered across the mountain, some found in a state of undress despite freezing temperatures. The circumstances of their deaths were bizarre and unsettling. Some of the hikers had severe internal injuries, and one woman was missing her tongue. Others showed signs of radiation exposure, though none of them had been involved in any known nuclear activities. There was no conclusive explanation for their deaths, and the theories about what happened range from an avalanche to military involvement or even extraterrestrial encounters. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most disturbing and mysterious disappearances in history. While the Russian government recently reopened the case, no definitive answers have been found, leaving the incident shrouded in mystery. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Legendary Union leader Jimmy Hoffa vanished without a trace. Hoffa was last seen outside the Machu's Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, where he had arranged to meet two reputed mobsters. He was never seen again, and despite numerous investigations, his disappearance remains one of the most famous unsolved cases in American history. Over the years, many theories have emerged, suggesting that Hoffa was either murdered by the mafia or met with foul play due to his involvement in organized crime. His disappearance has become a symbol of the corrupt underworld that dominated labor unions and organized crime in the mid-20th century. Yet, to this day, no concrete evidence has ever been found to explain his disappearance, making it one of the most unsettling cases in American history. The disappearance of Agatha Christie. In 1926, renowned author Agatha Christie disappeared for 11 days, sparking a nationwide manhunt. Christie, who was known for her detective novels, left her home in a state of apparent distress and did not contact anyone for over a week. When she was finally found at a hotel in Harrogate, she had no memory of the events that led up to her disappearance and was unable to explain what had happened during her absence. While some speculated that she had suffered a mental breakdown, others suggested that it was a publicity stunt or an attempt to escape her troubled marriage. Christie's disappearance remains one of the most perplexing and eerie events in the history of literature, and it only adds to the mystique of her legacy. The disappearance of the lost colony of Roanoke. Perhaps one of the most famous disappearances in American history is that of the lost colony of Roanoke. In 1587, a group of English settlers established a colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of North Carolina. 3 years later, a supply ship returned to find the colony completely abandoned, with no trace of the settlers except for the word Croatoan carved into a post. Over the years, many theories have been proposed to explain what happened to the Roanoke settlers. Some suggest that they were killed by Native Americans, while others believe they assimilated into local tribes or were lost at sea. Despite extensive efforts to uncover the truth, the mystery of the lost colony remains unsolved. Disappearances have always fascinated and disturbed us, leaving us with a sense of unease and the need for closure. Whether it's the tragic story of the Zong and the senseless killings of hundreds, the mysterious vanishing of Flight MH370, or the eerie disappearance of the Beaumont children, these events continue to haunt our collective consciousness. As we look back on these stories, we are left with the unsettling reality that sometimes the most chilling mysteries in history are the ones that remain unsolved. If you like this content, please subscribe.